Hello people, it is your boy Toyin back again with another video. If you're new to this series, it is called Building DanceBuddy, where in this series I'm building out a mobile application for dancers called DanceBuddy. I'm using Flutter to do so, and I'm documenting my whole journey. So from learning Flutter, picking up Flutter as a new kind of Flutter developer, to implementing the things that I learn and building out this mobile application from scratch and building it out to a fully fledged kind of side project or eventually SaaS. So that might include marketing as well and shipping the application. So if you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you don't, subscribe anyway. Don't be a hater. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment down below, and share the video as well. I would much appreciate that. And let's get into today's update. So in today's update, I am talking much more conceptually, more about architecture in general. And do you need architecture? Do you need to consider architecture principles and design patterns? Is there any point in it, basically, when you're building out like a side project or a side kind of SaaS? So let me show you the application in its full state, essentially. So basically, for the last couple of weeks now, I have not made any major changes to the app in terms of its functionalities or its features, right? It still pretty much looks the same. Some of the buttons have changed, like the upper button has kind of changed. The color of the app has slightly changed. But all in all, it's basically the same application. I've not made major changes to it. What I've been spending my time on for the last 2 weeks has been the architecture side of things. Now, when I say architecture, it's a very broad term in general in software as well. It can refer to anything in terms of like the folder structure, the project structures, where you keep things basically, but also some of the practices that you employ. Now, it's a very broad term. I've been focusing on architecture and I wanted to learn more about how to build out kind of robust, reusable, maintainable Flutter applications. But is there any point in this, right? Is there any point in what I've been doing, for example, spending 2 weeks trying to build, just move files around, abstract certain things from a certain class into another class? Is there any point in this? So let me actually show you what I've done. So I've separated my application into 2 layers, broadly speaking. So I've got the UI layer, which I've called features. So these are like the screens themselves. Like you've got a home screen there. So I've got this home screen, and this home screen is split up into the application part, which has the view model, which stores all the data and the state. And then we've got the actual screen itself, which is just the UI part. And I've got that for all of the different features that I have, right? Different screens and different features. And then on the other side, the other layer is the data layer. That's more the backend sort of stuff. So that's everything to do with Firebase. Right at the moment, I've got a storage repository. I'm using Firebase storage. So I'm storing the videos in Firebase storage. So I need to fetch them and update them, delete them, etc. And also my authentication, same thing. Using Firebase authentication, so I'm storing that there. So I've split that further up into services and repositories. Again, I'm just using some of the design patterns or architectural patterns that are recommended by Flutter themselves. And let me actually show you that on screen. So Flutter recommends certain patterns, right? They talk to you about architecture, they recommend certain things, and I'm using MVVM, model view model, essentially the architecture and state management. So is there any point in this? I spent 2 weeks working on this now. The app has not really changed, but what has changed is I've put different files or different classes in different places. The main thing to consider when you're thinking about architecture is, 1, do you even need to? And 2, what is your goal in spending time in considering architecture or app architecture? Now, broadly speaking, I think from my point of view, there's kind of 4 things that you consider when you're building out a side project or a SaaS yourself in terms of architecture. One of the main things is complexity and scope. So basically, how big is this side project, right? For a very simple project that you're just using to learn, you might be learning like the basics of Flutter, for example, the basics of a different programming language. If it's very simple, 2 or 3 classes, 4, 5, 6 classes, or different files, don't really need to consider app architecture, right? What's the point in creating 1,000 directories and put in each one of these 6 files that you have into different, you're just wasting time, really and truly. However, if the plan, which is for me, to build out like an MVP for an application and then make the app a lot larger, build a lot more features into it, a lot of different things that I haven't even thought about, it might be worth considering starting out with good app architecture so that when I go on into the future, and we're talking toying in 6 months from now, in a year from now, looking at the app, I'm like, okay, I can very simply, when I want to add something new, a new feature, I know I'm adding a whole new feature into my current directory and then adding whatever it is, right? So in that way, it makes it more extensible, more maintainable in the future. And that's the whole point of architecture. So it's kind of you're spending time upfront versus the capital expenditure, capex versus opex, right? You're spending time upfront, making it nice, making the folders, creating the project structure, so that later on I'm spending less time on building out new features, right? So you're thinking about the complexity and the scope of your project. Next, learning. Now, app architecture, if you are a software developer in your full-time job, right, like I am, in my 9 to 5, I'm a software developer. So app architecture in general is huge. It's a big topic because there's always different ways of doing things. There's things that are simple, there's things more complicated, but you're always working with other people in that environment. So in my 9 to 5, I work in a team of multiple developers working on the same code base. Their app architecture becomes so important because things need to be properly segregated and you need to have proper separation of concerns so that multiple developers can work on the same code base without creating conflicts. That's the whole point of app architecture in terms of the code base. Now, that's why I have a big focus on this myself, because I am always looking to make sure I update my understanding of app architecture, find out what different architectures are good, what are useful, which ones I pick up. And I'm essentially using my side project, my SaaS, to build that muscle in myself, to build that skill, right? So that's why I'm implementing it myself. So yes, it's a time investment. I'm spending a lot of time on it, even though I'm the only developer that's currently working on this. But you never know, right? If this becomes a proper application, a proper SaaS, and it becomes bigger, then someone else might look at this application. Some other developer might help me work on this application, and then the fact that I have good app architecture might be useful at that time. So you always got to think of it that way. Of course, I do still think that it's a lot of time investment. And at the beginning, if it's a small project, you're not thinking I'm going to take it anywhere specifically, might not be any point. You can always change as well. And then the other thing, the third kind of thing as well is the long-term goals. So I mentioned that already kind of briefly, but where are you looking for your side project to go? Is it truly a side project? You're just creating it for now, creating it just to learn how to use this language, how to create projects, or how to do X, Y, and Z? If that's the case, brilliant. Don't worry too much about architecture, right? Don't worry too much about using the proper patterns, about dependency injection, about in testing test cases and all of these other things, because you don't really need to. Well, what you're trying to build out there is just your skills in terms of being a developer and creating something in that particular language. But if your long-term goals are maybe to build a SaaS, like mine is eventually with this application, then maybe you do want to think about app architecture. Maybe it's important, or maybe it might be useful that you properly separate concerns, that I make sure that my code is maintainable and I can reuse it and it's very easy to understand in the future. Because again, Toyin from 6 months from now, very different person than Toyin today, right? Different brother, different guy. So he might not understand what you're writing right now. So to make sure that I keep that up, I try and have good app architecture. And then the last thing, kind of mentioned already as well, if you're ever thinking about maybe building it out to a bigger project or having others help you with the project, then obviously app architecture becomes the bread and butter of all issues, right? So I'm a senior software engineer. We talk about architecture all the time. If you have bad architecture, the project is not set up in a good way, if features are created just ad hoc and they're placed anywhere, it's a hot mess, right? Again, as a side project, that might not be so much of a concern, but if you think that potentially your app might go somewhere where you might, have other people joining your team, or other developers just in their free time. Maybe you're doing a project with someone else. There's two developers, two of you working on the same project. Good good architecture would be really useful in that scenario. But yeah, a very quick update basically on how I'm doing with DanceBuddy currently. I am working on battling with architecture, trying to make my application feel good and trying to also at the same time understand the recommendations made by the Flutter dev team themselves. They recommend MVVM, as I mentioned earlier. I'm picking that up and I'm doing that mostly as well for my own learning, something that I can then take into my 9 to 5, and it's going to make me generally a better software engineer, because I think of myself as an engineer rather than a developer. So I think holistically about solving problems. And one of the big problems that you encounter whilst you're working as a software engineer actually is that people are coming to you, I don't know where this code is. Like, where do I change something? Right? And that comes down to architecture. If it's clear where new features are, if you're looking at a certain screen, if you look at the code base, it's going to be in this place. That is good. That is good for new developers. That's good for old developers. That's good for anyone joining that particular code base. Right. So I'm always thinking about that, and I'm currently using I'm using DanceBuddy to improve my skill in that area. So yeah, it's a quick video. I know basically this was me just talking at you rather than showing you any new features or new code, but I did want to do this update because I've been working on this for the last couple of weeks. And the whole point of this YouTube series is to document everything, right? So it's not exciting, it's not super exciting, but it's what I've been doing, and hopefully, it's somewhat useful for you if you are building out your own side project or your own little SaaS as well. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. Hopefully I'll finish that in the next few days, and we'll get onto some more exciting things like the backend, for example, or UI. We'll see what comes first. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you've gotten to the end, as I mentioned earlier, please consider subscribing to the channel. Leave a like, share, and comment as well, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.